And it's time to move on to the next subject here with Professor Anna Bastida, who's coming to us from Dundee, Scotland.
So, hi, hello, Jones. Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon, Anna. I think that there's 8 hours difference.
It is 7 hours difference now.
Okay, well, that's not bad, not that bad. Anna, we presented you for this summit as being to do some sort of wrap up analysis, and as well as your own views on social policy and just the general position of the mining industry, and so feel free.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much, John, for the invitation. I am truly honored. The quality of the presentations, the content, the debate has been fantastic, and it has been such an amazing exposure to the major shifts in the industry. So I am honored to have that you have given me this role to reflect on what has been said in the context of as well of my own work, so that it would be the way that I would do it. So first of all, I wanted to reflect on the title of the event. Is on challenges to mineral resources development, but I was also thinking it is probably we haven't seen before any of us. So that level of attention, interest from global actors in the mining sector. So it is also a challenge to the mining sector to play that huge important role in supplying the materials for the energy transition. So it is both challenges to minerals development, mineral resources development, but also the sector itself. It is challenged to play that role that is expected from to meet the goals of decarbonization. That it is a common concern of humanity, and one of the major global challenges of our age. So what I was, I would like to first to reflect on the major shifts that we can see, that many of us have been actors and witnessing trends in the industry for a very long time. Probably we have never seen this level of uptake, as I said, this level of shift that were gradually evolving, but we can see that they are accelerating. So what I would like to reflect first is on the shifts that we witness, and it is a summary of what I have listened today, and of the issues that we are all exposed to, and then major shifts in mining and in mining supply chains that we also start to see, or we are also seeing, and we are also engaging in shifts in the understanding and developments in the legal and regulatory framework for the mining sector at the national level. And then as we go global, as minerals have a role in global value chains, and challenges involve global actors as well, and national economies, local communities in places far away from the sites where minerals are processed even and consumed and turned into inputs for industries and products for major consumption. So what are the challenges there? What are responses by international law and by global actors? And what does all mean for the long governance of mining and minerals when we look at it from a global perspective? And what are the challenges as well in terms of education, of research, and for all of us to work in a collaborative way, because I think that all these challenges are accelerating, are very complex, and require all of us to work together to contribute to solutions. So, and actually even the format, another question that we can all see that John has said before, it is this very same format of the virtual platforms where we can all connect from different parts of the world to share experience, to share reflections, also allow us to bring together different views, perspectives, and to advance knowledge and diverse understanding on the issues, the challenges, and the solutions. So the first question I think we have gone through in the conference has been a very clear understanding of the major shifts that have happened in the mining, in the treatment of waste, and in supply chains. So from, I would say, first shift from mining as focused on the extraction of minerals to mining as an industry concerning the provision of materials that service industries and service the infrastructure of the energy transition. It was interesting to recall the change of focus of Anglo-American, for example, and the change of presentation of the company as a primary extraction company to a service provider that one of the speakers mentioned about. Another major shift is from closing sites and what it used to be in old mining law and old practices, abandoning sites, to the understanding of regenerating sites and regenerating nature in those sites. And of course, and another question that was not addressed today, but also the issue of regeneration of economies, local economies, and including communities, and including the question of benefits for communities. So there has been debate on, and led me to write a paper a few years ago that it was a debate on from extractive to transformative industries. Industries that used to be based on the extraction and export in many economies of these resources, to economies that build linkages around sites in terms of suppliers, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of downstream processes, and in terms of the linkages with science, technology, and the innovation system. So another major shift that I think is extremely interesting in terms of the circular economy is a shift from mining as an industry that a huge generator of waste. So it has been called as an industry that generates waste as it mines. As the understanding of waste as initial resources that have value, and the understanding of minerals as resources that can be recycled and reused over in the future. So minerals are depleted by the minerals when it has been said is that non-renewable resources, they are depleted at the site of extraction, but actually they can be reused, recycled and reused. And that understanding of how to trace those minerals and how to improve technologies, it is already issues that were ideas, and there was an understanding even not too long ago. They are already in the table and in this in understanding of these major shifts about mining and minerals, the industry and the products. Another major shift, I think, is from operators, from miners that have traditionally been, it has traditionally been seen as an industry reluctant somehow to innovation. So to an industry that is forging partnerships with technology enterprises to innovate, and that is building and understanding on the need to innovate, not only to be competitive, but also to respond to the challenges of responsible investment, responsible sourcing, and even the challenges of ethical investment and financing. So the issue of innovation as crucial to the sector is another major shift. Another important point that emerged in the discussion is this shift from externalization of costs, that it was externalizing costs that somebody will face them, and it will be the most vulnerable in society, externalizing environmental and social performance, and so as costs. Of course, they are at the end of the day internalized by someone else that is not the industry. So I think there was a very interesting discussion and in the panel on IRMA, the IRMA standard. So how it is, we see this as well as a way, this standard, this very forward-looking, progressive, dynamic standard as a way also to internalize costs. That is very interesting trend. Another interesting trend that came up is a trend from opaque supply chains to the understanding there is a need to improve transparency and data and the streamlining of data for traceability of materials and minerals along the value chain. So it is when we start to look at the value chains globally, that's a very important aspect. Another important shift is, I think, when we look at when we start to look at the sector globally. So when we start to look at this contrast between resources that are mined in sites close to communities, in remote areas, as I said before, that source the global economy, but there is not that there is an inner demand for them, for these minerals in these places. So there are academics and communities have called these mines as sort of spaceships. They are not, they land in their lands, in their communities, and extract resources, but it was not a demand from internal demand from these communities for these mines and for these resources. So in a way, I think when we look at these sites from a global perspective, I think we see a trend as well from the invisibility of the sector, because until not too long ago, there was the society in general, there was an opposition to the sector, but there was not an understanding of the contribution of the sector and the materials in the global economy. I think that understanding is, that issue is shifting. It is becoming a sector that is visible in society. You have discussions with everyone about lithium, about cobalt, and these are issues that are understood by society. And so the challenge is, the debate is moving on from the question of we don't want mining to an understanding of the complexity of these projects, and the understanding that something needs to be done and that all actors need to be involved. So I would say that then from the invisibility of the sector, and it's the role of the sector in the global economy, to what I would say probably an ethical term, and what I would say, what Amy Boulanger called an understanding of that there is a need of honest accounting of the practices and use of minerals and materials by industrial societies. So I would say, yes, definitely, we are seeing major shifts that if we had this conversation even 3 years ago, we wouldn't have been able, probably been able to see them so clearly as we can see them now, and the level of understanding and uptake by so many actors in society, that it has definitely shifted. So this, we see these major shifts in mining and understanding of supply chains and the contributions of the sector. But we also see major shifts in the understanding of the legal regulatory frameworks for the mining sector. And so the need and the tools to mainstreaming, to integrating environmental and social considerations into decision-making processes. So I saw the first panel on the NEPA, on the tool this interdisciplinary project, fantastic interdisciplinary project on NEPA access, and the understanding of the science law interface, understanding of NEPA as of the development of tools for generating knowledge, for engaging, of these NEPA as tools for knowledge generation, for engagement and citizen participation, for regulatory innovation and design. I think that this is a fantastic development. So it is definitely, we see a major shift. And John and I are major, I think, are followers of the history of mining law, that we can see this history from title that decision-making was symbolized in what an operator needed was title, access to the resources, and that was subject to operational permits that in historical mining law was health and safety and some safeguards for in the construction of mine sites that we can see even in the ordinances, in the old ordinances of New Mexico, that I understand that major sources, there was a major sources of many mining laws in Latin America, and also of American mining law in federal lands. So that decision-making process that was focused on economic considerations. So we can see how over time tools, instruments, environmental instruments, tools, and also infrastructures, administrative infrastructures, and have developed and are developing further to mainstream environmental and social considerations into decision-making processes. I said in the panel on indigenous people's rights, we also heard many examples from Professor James Hopkins on the incorporation of communities, consultation to communities in the permitting processes, as in the example of Ontario that he provided. So it is the mainstreaming of criteria in decision-making processes in national legislation. So that is very, very interesting and very interesting, very important debates in the conference. I will say that the next step, and so it would be from national legislation and from developments in national legislation in landscapes, using the term that Professor James Hopkins used, in landscapes, I would say, of strong institutions and regulations, that then when we go global, when we look at the challenges in the global supply chains, in the contracts, as I said before, between mining in remote communities, in countries that are not driving demand, but have a role in supplying resources for the global economy. So it is here that the complexity of mining in countries with weak and weakened institutions. So in the 90s, many countries in the developing, in low and middle income countries, went through processes of massive reform of their legal frameworks to attract investment. And even there was institutional reforms to put in place cadasters and to provide certainty to rights, to investors, and contracts. So contracts that would provide certainty and would fill regulatory gaps, and that they would interface with the adoption of with international investment and trade legislation. But of course, during that time of opening up to international investment and having the infrastructure to do so, enabling what it was called the enabling environment to do so, at the same time, these countries also adopted international instruments on environmental to uphold environmental rights, human rights. And in many cases, they also reformed their constitutions to uphold these rights. Of course, the process of development of legislation to implement these rights and the process of building the institutions to enforce, to regulate and enforce those rights. So of course, we cannot generalize. In many cases, there has been a strong, gradual, but strong development. In many other cases, there are still very weak institutions, many gaps, many deficits in these frameworks. So I would say that by the late 2000s, by late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, the problems of institutional weaknesses were expressed through conflict. But I think what it is, in many cases there has been lots of debate on the issues of social license to operate. But I think we need to understand that what underlies conflict is these weak institutions, gaps, deficits, ineffective institutions that need strengthening. So that I will get back to this point, but I would like to go to another point that it was addressed at a great detail and very, very interestingly in the conference. The next point is faced to these important gaps. What have been, and these interstices, I would say, gaps, interstices, deficits, in national, local frameworks? What are the responses? On one hand, we see the development of international law, international environmental law, international human rights law, and on the other hand, the development of standards brought by global actors that are involved in industries as mining with the global outreach. So on one hand, I think that was an issue that was discussed really in great detail very, very interesting by both Professor James Hopkins and Dr. Laltaika. on the development of international human rights law. It places emphasis to the duty of states to protect human rights and mechanisms of protection, and which are relevant to land rights and use. And what they mentioned, what they focused on the evolution of standards and processes to consult and cooperate in good faith with indigenous peoples to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent prior to the approval of projects. So this standard has evolved over time. It has been interpreted by international courts at the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, and that is also another phenomenon. That's why I think that I will show you the graph that I have included in my book. I see this as different phenomena of levels of normative ordering that relate to the law and governance of mining and minerals in a broad sense. So another phenomenon, another level of ordering, it is a transnational level that is, and that was extensively discussed in the panel on responsible sourcing, on IRMA. And so this progressive, very interesting standard that I think that it is extremely interesting how it can be a tool to complement government instruments, and it is also a market tool for more scrutiny of mining operations, mining companies on the ground. I think, so I see that there are a couple of things that I wanted to say on these aspects. First, we see major shift in terms of international law of concerning the recognition of local peoples, not only indigenous peoples, as Professor Laltaika said, but also local peoples, local peasant communities, indigenous and local peoples, those that are most vulnerable in society. And a very interesting question that Eli raised, that is also the emphasis on the question of values. What is valuable for indigenous peoples and local communities? What is the value of land from their cultural and spiritual visions and ways of understanding the world? So I think that it is a very important point, because when we were speaking about a major changes in the way, major shift in the way decisions are made, that mainstream and integrate environmental and social considerations. And I bring back the presentation on NEPA, and that it is these decision-making processes need to be based on knowledge. And I would say it is on scientific knowledge, but as we see from the presentations on indigenous peoples, it's also about diverse ways of knowing. So the decision-making process needs to be made, needs to consider, of course, need to be based on science, but need also to be inclusive and consider the ways and the values and the other ways of knowing and understanding the world for those that are essentially affected by these projects that have this. So knowledge has to be sensitive to cultural values. So, and then another important point, I would say, so this point, I wanted to make this point on the issue of the interaction of international law and the uptake of the understanding of indigenous rights. But when we look at the contribution of IRMA and other standards in transnational governance, I think we can see as well a major shift in private governance and in the scrutiny of private of the private sector that some academics have spoke or have speak about private authority. So I would say, taking into consideration all these aspects, I say, well, we can talk. We can say that the law and governance of mining and minerals is a framework for the exercise of public authority and also of private authority, or for scrutiny of private conduct and accountability of both public and private parties in decision-making process, of course, under the rule of law, for better performance of these activities and good outcomes and sustainable outcomes on the ground. So based on these reflections, I just wanted to finalize. So just I wanted to show you like probably I will see if I can share. No, I don't see how to share my. It was just a scheme based on my book. That in my book I have developed. What I say is that probably the way or the framework we have to at the moment to think about the legal framework for the activity to today, it doesn't give us the right lenses to understand the breadth and the complexity of the legal phenomenon that we see today in the sector, and the scale of this phenomenon, of these levels of normative ordering. So we need a methodological resource, like what I call a matrix, a disciplinary matrix, like a method or a lenses to better understand these different levels of normative ordering. So this lenses is basically the understanding that are different levels of regulation, of law and regulation. There is international, we see international law and policy, international law policy, and also international cooperation. We also see regional frameworks that we didn't deal with them today, but we also see transnational standards and transnational guidance, transnational phenomenon. That one aspect of this transnational ordering is, of course, IRMA and this type of governance and standards, but also the extraterritorial legislation that it was also mentioned in the IRMA panel, that this responsible sourcing and due diligence of supply chain legislation, that is also requiring companies, not only mining companies, but also companies that use minerals as inputs for their projects and along their supply chain to uphold these standards. So it is also a way of scrutiny it's a way of scrutiny of public conduct and private actors. And then, of course, the traditional way or the traditional level, the domestic level, that is the traditional level of ordering of mining and minerals at the national level, and the interface with local levels. What I think that is a very important challenge. It is to understand better, as a field of work, practice, research, the interface between these different levels. And I thought it was very interesting, the reflection by Dr. Eli Laikaika on these recommendations to companies. So in places, in countries that with weak governance, weak institutions, where national legislation does not yet meet international standards, it's important to uphold international standards. And I would say the challenge. So I would say two things. I think from this from all these reflections. So the first one is that the feeling as we go through all what has happened and how this the understanding of what needs to happen to mainstream the sector into sustainability principles is so encouraging and exciting. So on one hand, that is a feeling, and on the other hand, that is, of course, as we go global, and because of the huge demands for minerals for the energy transition in places of weak institutions, the feeling is also of concern, and the feeling is also of the need to join efforts to contribute to the challenge of institutional strengthening, and I think that it is very important. And in my book, I included in the first page that it is I said there is it is an invitation to join the challenge, and it is also to think of these issues globally, and to address and to embrace and to work together to address the challenges. And also I also mentioned the challenge of a diversity in the making, in knowledge making, generating knowledge from a very diverse global community. And yeah, these platforms allow us to do so, and also of joining forces to tackle these challenges. And the last point I wanted to make is on the panel on education. So I think absolutely that is another major shift that it is happening. I think that I would like to congratulate the University of Arizona for embracing the challenge and bringing this joining forces with different disciplines, between different disciplines, to provide the this academic offer, and understanding of the need of a much more diverse set of skills in the sector to address the challenge. So that is what I would like to conclude. So I hope that I have provided the starting point or a synthesis of reflections and challenges, and what I think it is a whole field to work together to address the issues of a sector that is truly global, and that it probably has never been a better understanding, a more rounded understanding of the place that it has in addressing both in addressing the global challenges of our age, and also of the needs that of internal changes in the sector and in its governance to do so. So thank you very much all for attention.
Well, thank you, Ana. You provide some very valuable insights for us, and I will say too, to the extent that you have some images from your book that you'd like to send along, we can include that in the available materials.
Okay.
What we're going to do is to add in captions for the presentations, and when we when we post them on YouTube. But I think that we have some of our panel is online, and so we can promote Amy from Irma to if Amy has some questions or additional comments. And so, Amy, I think we've opened the door for you. There you are.
I'm watching the sun just stream in the window here in the Northwest too. Apologies for the funny light and the halo that I have, but I just wanted to thank you all at University of Arizona for having us and Christy Disney-Bruckner's panel, and then to Professor Bastida here for her insightful review of the different ones, and was really interested especially to hear the notes on government. And because we work with this voluntary initiative, what is the role of law and government at this time? And we always say that it's so critical that voluntary initiatives will never replace the importance of that role and the rules and the guidelines set for all operators to follow. And in fact, there's a risk if voluntary initiatives are relied on too heavily that you take that pressure and support an opportunity for government to rise to that work and create that. But I feel that this is a time when governments are under so much pressure to be serving in so many different ways. And how do we do that in such a way as to recognize they're trying to cover food and healthcare and all of these things and try to create an economic opportunity moment for them to rise to this opportunity?
I think, Amy, is a fantastic point. Actually, it's the interface between standards as IRMA, I think, and regulation and institutions. And I think there is, I think that is an issue that is of much develop. That's going to develop over time. I think even we can. I'm thinking so even. Local courts can interpret IRMA so as a standard, and so to localize it and put it in context. Then another issue I was thinking, I've been doing some work on lithium and so on and salt lakes, so on the governance of the salt lakes in Argentina and Chile, and I've been looking at some companies reporting, for example. And so I think that level of reporting I think over time we'll talk more with environmental impact assessment, with the requirements of environmental assessments. So it will support the work of environmental authorities. I think that is the way that I am seeing the interaction. I think that it's a field of study and research and work because I think that interaction between the work of environmental authorities that have the oversight and enforcement of what mining companies are doing on the ground, for example, on the issue of how they use water, or if they overdraw brine from the salt lakes. So how they report that and probably introduce standards so to monitor compliance on the ground. And so that can be also part of the reporting. So I think that is very interesting.
I love that idea of integrating what's coming in through regulatory data and voluntary initiatives. And then you have this greater efficiency for companies. So you're not having to report in completely separated worlds, right? So you can have a joining there and ultimately a greater amount of information for the stakeholders and indigenous rights holders most affected, who are hungry for the information and to better understand the impacts and where the risks are. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, but it's exactly that. It is generating more data at the local sites, and even in Chile there is an initiative that actually was brought by the major car makers, the automotive industry, by this Drive Sustainability initiative. So it is a responsible lithium partnership that actually they commissioned GIZ. An initiative on the water, the Salar de Atacama watershed. So it is just starting, but you can see the potential there to as a platform to collect data, to share information. So I guess that it is going to start at some point. It will connect ESG standards and so also the work of the regulatory authorities.
Thank you. Cassie, do you have any wrap-up comments that you'd like to make?
Well, Anna, it's so nice to see you. And I loved your comments. In particular, sort of this idea that the mining industry has gone from having always been there, but nobody appreciated sort of their role in the world. And they've always been on their back foot and apologists for what they've done. And now they're a part of the energy transition. And so I would be interested in your thoughts on how the mining industry can sort of use this time as an opportunity to better educate the world. In mining circles, people talk all the time about nobody gets how important we are. Well, now some people do, and we need to take the opportunity. So how best can the industry as a whole sort of use this time to show why they're important?
Yes, yeah, that's really great. I think it is. I think there is a level of understanding. I'm sure that we all see it. So people that would see what we do or mining as something that it does not relate to their lives. And so to see, wow, this is a very important issue. So so I think the media has had a very important role, and probably there has been also a change from a focus on conflict and the impacts of the industry to understanding that it is a product that is required, that generates the products that are the material basis for societies. So I think that even if it is so important, and it was important before the energy transition, but there was not that level of understanding. So I think that's why it's so important to really, as I say, to make progress on this. So there has never been that level of I think, of engagement from so many actors, and understanding that more needs to be done as well. So I guess that it is, it is through education. So through what we can do in our own areas of work, isn't it? And even through more collaboration, I think that is that issue. I think that even in research, in academia, so there is more emphasis, for example, for access to research funding. So more emphasis on interdisciplinary research, like the NEPA Access project that was a fantastic example of, and what interdisciplinarity allows in terms of advancing knowledge that in our own silos we wouldn't be able to do that. And then also the interaction between the academic community and practice. There is more and more funding as well for advancing knowledge. So through these networks and through working together, so through academic research and the methods of academic research and frameworks, and also the knowledge practice. And so things are happening so fast, isn't it? And so I think at this level of knowledge, so how we can all make progress. I think that really we need to, so it is the time it is really the time to make progress. So it is a sort of quantum leap in a way. So that I think at least that is what I have never seen that in all the time. So it was also an effort, I would say. It was also an effort, I would say, just in my teaching, at least. So because I had to teach not only to my students, but also for other communities or stakeholders to explain what the industry is, to explain well, that is a global industry, to explain the global actors. I think that I can see that there are many slides that I have to delete in my in my presentations, because there is also already a great level of understanding of the issues.
Good. Well, I think that you know, we've reached the end of our allotted time. Anna, I truly appreciate your staying up until 11 o'clock at night to participate in this, and thank you all. I will also add that if anyone within our audience and registrants have ideas as to the areas that you'd like to have a mining summit address, please send them on to me, and we'll be happy to consider them. Like you say, we've this is our 7th annual summit, and it looks to me like when we go back to the first summit, when we were looking at remining contaminated areas, it looks like that issue remains out there, and probably needs addressing. So thank you all. I really appreciate it, and also thank Brian and Bernadette for keeping the technology going here. And Caleb Jackson is over on our post-production areas, and so we'll make sure we'll get these presentations captioned and posted on YouTube as soon as we can. So thanks again for all of your contributions.